This is Belen.
Yes.
And yes, I cut my hair by myself. Hey, it's Belen Diaz, and this is the E-volve show. And today we have with us a dating coach to tell us how to feel more confident. Her name is Lana Otoya. Lana is a professional dating coach and dating advice blogger. She developed strategies to help women find a man that truly enhances their life rather than settling down just to be married. So, hello, Lana. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me, Belen.
Yeah, of course. So, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and how did you come up with this idea of
Yeah,
helping women?
for sure, for sure. So I'm primarily a dating coach. So that is what I mostly do. But along with dating comes a lot of, you have to have a good, strong mental health. You have to have solid self-esteem and project a feeling of confidence. And that is kind of how you get good at dating. So yeah, I started out just doing dating advice, writing about dating. It was just kind of a personal interest of mine. And then slowly I started realizing how much dating is such a mental game. So
Mm-hmm.
I started kind of going down that rabbit hole of like, how do you feel more confident? How do you build self-esteem? What kind of things do you need to know in order to attract a significant other?
Totally. And then I was reading in your website, you say like in the beginning you were kind of like coaching men, and that's how
Yes.
you kind of like got all the insights in there.
That's right. Well, actually what it was that I started as a matchmaker I was supposed to be matching up men with, significant others, finding women for them. So, after you hear man after man after man talk about what they're
The
looking
same.
for in their dream woman, you kind of start going, hey, there's a lot of similarities here. And there's a lot of things that people are looking for and they have in common. So I discovered, what it is that makes people attractive to men.
Nice. How cool.
Mhm.
And then I was reading another thing that it caught my attention. You were saying something about your past situation or how like your background. You say like you were single back then, but you
Yep.
were not feeling lonely or like you were
Right.
finding for somebody to add to your life. I think that's very valuable too.
For sure. I mean, that you've hit the nail on the head. Like that is a key aspect to what I try to portray to women and stuff like that. And these are the kind of women that I attract to my website and to my coaching are women that are confident, like, confident in other areas of their life. Like they've usually worked their way up a corporate ladder. They have gotten a big education. They have social gatherings that they go to, sometimes volunteer work. So their lives are very busy and feel very fulfilled, right? So this is how most modern women are. Most, millennials and even a little bit older and a little bit younger, women these days, we don't need men to survive. So we know that. And so we go around and we live our lives and we do what we need to
Don't need
do.
that.
Yeah. And then eventually we realize, well, it would be nice to settle down with somebody, but not because I have to, just because I want to. And that little gap of going from being a really confident single woman to being a really confident woman in a relationship, that little bridge is what I kind of help with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think like your work is like so interesting. I was like very excited for this conversation because I mean, I'm in a relationship for a while, like we've been together for
Mm-hmm.
6 years. And
Wow.
but
Yeah.
I have friends, around asking me and not asking me for advice, but just talking about it. And they talk a lot, well, all these new dating online and
Yep.
with the applications, and for me it's like another world because I guess I wasn't there in any time, so I
Mm-hmm.
can't even imagine what it is. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just funny to see like they're asking like, well, they're like, well, I have to do a profile, like what do I say about myself? And that's what you were saying, like people are starting to, like, you start lacking confidence there. So what
Yep.
would be your input or your advice for the online dating these days?
For sure. I mean, great question. Yeah. I mean, the game has completely changed these
Mm-hmm.
days. It is totally different. And I've worked with a lot of people who, they've been married for 20 years or married for 30 years. And the idea of swiping on an app, is just
God.
it's just a whole other world. And it's true. I mean, I think that is the first step into kind of going into this world, is that you have to realize that it is a little bit different. Nobody's ever taught you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not used to it, you can get hit really hard with a big sense of reality, and that is what I see a lot, is that people expect it to be easy. They expect to go online and just start swiping, and then they'll just be able to go on dates, and they get hit really hard when they realize it's not always like that, and it can be time consuming, and it can be a little bit more of a frustrating experience.
Yeah.
So a big part of my job is just kind of telling people, it's not you, it's just the way it works. This is just
Mhm.
how it is. And if you kind of do what you need to do to maximize your success, it's going to be a lot better than just getting frustrated and throwing it out the window. Because these days, online dating is still the most significant way to meet somebody. Like, it
Yeah.
is the most effective way to meet somebody. So if you get tired of it and you kind of give up too quickly, you've really kind of shot yourself in the foot, because you're missing on a huge
Oh,
opportunity.
totally. Because I feel like that was another realization. I'm like, well, nowadays, before you could think like, oh, just like weird guys are there or like creepy
Yeah.
guys are there.
Yeah.
But the reality is like everybody's there. Like if you don't play that game, you're out, is what you're saying. Like nowadays, that's the way to do it. I mean, one of the ways
For sure.
to do it.
Yeah. And of course, you're always going to meet somebody. You could meet somebody at school or at work or at the grocery store. You could do that. It's still possible. But going online doesn't take away those real life opportunities. Like, if you're online, you're still going to go to the grocery store, right? So it's not like you're taking away those opportunities. You're simply adding to those opportunities. And what it's doing for women, especially these days,
Mm-hmm.
is it's allowing us to have so much more option, right? Like, back in the day, you really were limited to people in your neighborhood, people at your church, these men that might be, at your work or something like that. And, you can get stuck in a relationship that's not that great if you have very limited options. But nowadays, you really have that ability to go in, look at what these guys are offering, see what they're like, and filter them out so that you can find a better relationship in the long run.
Yeah. What will be like, I'm just curious, like what will be like one filter or two filters you'll do in those
Yep.
profiles? Like when you see a profile for a man, like it will be, oh, red flag or something like.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anybody that's talking about anything sexual or anything, having fun, just in it for some fun or anything like that. I mean, that's a very obvious. The reason why that is a red flag is because all men want to have sex. All
And
of them
have
do,
fun.
right? So they're all like that. But the ones that are actually talking about that in the profile, that to me signals a little bit of a social disconnect,
Mhm.
because it's not really something that you're supposed to say on these things. You want to just attract somebody for their personality and then see where things go. So that's why that to me is a big red flag, because that's somebody that is a little bit off socially, right? And then you can
Yeah,
see it
totally.
instantly.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
hear stories that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it can get really bad. It can get really bad.
Yeah, but
But
that
I
I
mean,
think,
it's good.
yeah, that's what I think. Like what you do is great because also I feel like sometimes like people feel like you don't have somebody to ask these questions or ask for this kind of advice. Like you can ask for at your friends or something like that, but
Yeah.
it is tricky because everybody's in the same boat. But I feel like
Hmm.
having a professional coach telling you like, hey, I've seen this tons of times, like that's not the
Yeah.
road you want to go, or like these are the
Hmm.
qualities you want to look for, or what also like what we were saying, like exactly knowing what you want, because some people are dating around and they don't even know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like
Exactly.
kind of like looking from one to another. They're changing this, but they don't know what they want.
Exactly. And that's a really good point. And that's something I really help with a lot, is because, when you do have so many options and you have all these people coming
Mhm.
at you, and, especially women, we get such an influx of messages and people trying to talk to us, men trying to talk to us. So it can be hard to decide what exactly we're looking for. And what I find is that a lot of women, they end up with these lists of standards, because they don't want to waste time. But the problem is that sometimes that list is a great thing, and I'm all for it.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're hurting yourself because it can get a little bit too much, and you're forgetting that these are just human beings and we're all trying to make it work,
And
and
we're not perfect.
nobody's perfect, right? I mean, I've had women tell me that they don't want a man who has a barbecue in his backyard.
You're like,
And I'm just like, okay. Right? Like, don't send me men who are barbecuing. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes the list is a great thing to have because you need standards, and
Mhm.
sometimes you're going to hurt your chances. So I like to help guide women with that. Are you actually just being too picky? Because it does happen.
Yeah, and some people I think they're too picky, or like what you say, like they just don't have the guidance and they're like
Hmm.
hurting themselves by saying like, oh,
Hmm.
I really want a guy who does this or who exercise or who does, I don't know, whatever
Hmm.
it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things that people prioritize, and sometimes they're great things and sometimes they're not so great. And it is just important to remember that when you're online, people are just photos, they're just a list of hobbies,
Mhm.
and you have no idea how that person really is in real life.
Yeah.
Somebody that mentioned that they like hiking and football, you might look, oh, I don't like hiking, I don't like football, but you talk to them for an hour and you think they're hilarious, they're a great
Yeah.
guy, they're funny, nice, and then all of a sudden your opinion has changed. So the biggest thing is, like, you don't want to waste time. I agree, you don't want to be going on date after date after date, but you do want to be getting out there often, because meeting people in person is really the way to go about it.
To meet them. That's true.
Yeah.
And then what will you, so for our audience that are here and
Hmm.
specifically for self-confidence, what
Yep.
will be your advice to feel more confidence on like dating these days online or things like
Yep.
that? Because as you were saying, like sometimes it's a little bit frustrated and
For
sometimes
sure.
they take things personally. So what will be like tips or advice that people can take just to
Yeah.
feel more confident in this area?
Definitely. Yeah. So at first, like when you're online, the biggest thing to remember is to try to keep your heart and your emotions out of it when you're still online. When you're still typing, when you're swiping, when you're texting, don't fall in love right away. Don't get too emotionally attached, because, I've had it so many times where women, they will tell me that they saw this amazing profile with a great guy and he has a dog and he lives close to me and he's amazing, and then
Like
you shoot
check,
him a
check,
message.
check, check.
Yeah, it's everything's getting checked, and then you shoot him a message and you don't hear anything, like he doesn't
Uh-huh.
respond back, and then you're like, oh, like you're crushed, and it's like, oh no. And if you're playing the game like that, you're going to get so tired so quickly, and you're going to be out of it before you even started. So what you have to do is just remember, everyone's a photo, everybody's a few words, and just be messaging and messaging and see how things go online. Don't get too emotionally invested right away. And that's going to really help your self-confidence,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no way to know why somebody doesn't message you. It could be that they're talking to someone else, that they're married, that they're not ready for a relationship, that their dog just died. Like, we have no idea,
Idea.
right, why somebody might not message you. So getting emotionally involved at that stage of the game is just not a good call, and it will really hurt your confidence. And then there's another thing specifically with confidence, is that once you do start talking to somebody, once you are kind of going on a few dates and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
it is really important to remember that, vulnerability is something that you have to do. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there in a way that somebody could maybe hurt you,
Yeah.
but do it in a way that if they do hurt you, you can kind of brush off the wounds and kind of get back onto it. And I know that is difficult. It is hard to do that sometimes, but just knowing that, one day when you actually do reveal yourself and somebody accepts you, who you really are, that is a real relationship, that is real love, and it is the best place that you want to be. So trying to be confident enough to kind of open yourself up a little bit, and then if you do get hurt, just kind of on to the next one. That is kind of the way you're supposed to date and meet real people.
Yeah, taking it like once and like every day, just
Yeah.
work process.
Exactly. Like one step at a time, and revealing yourself slowly to somebody else one step at a time. And that's sort of how you build a connection with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also about remembering that, especially in dating, like, you have to remember that there's like 7 billion people in the world, and we all have a different personality. Like, nobody has the same personality as somebody else. So if you find someone where, things are going well, but then eventually you feel like that you were clashing a little bit, that's okay, right? Like, it's either you work through it or you just move on to somebody else, right? There's so many people, there are so many fish in the sea, different personalities, and you will find somebody. There is that person out there for you. So be confident when you're going into the dating game.
Nice. And then another thing about that, so once, that's like a question, once that you, for example, go for a couple of dates with somebody, and then that person tells you like, this is not working, or I don't like you, or like, how, both ways, like, what do you recommend for the people who are like, the person who they're telling them that they don't want to hang out anymore, like,
or you just get ghosted.
Yeah, totally, because that's most that's most the cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great question. It's really good. It's really important to know how men fall in love and how women fall in love. So women, we fall in love in a way that is, we will look at a guy, we'll think, all right, he's attractive enough, I like the way he looks. And then from day one, we are thinking about if he's going to be a good match long term. So we're thinking about what he says, what he does for a living, if he talks about his mom, did he talk too much? Did he talk in a nice way about her? Like, we don't know. And we're trying to figure it out. Like, from the moment we order the appetizers on day one, we are trying to figure out if this guy is going to work long term. So if we go on a second date with this guy, it means he didn't mess it up. It means that it's like, oh, okay, he's not so bad. Yeah. And then if we go on date 3, 4, 5, we're saying this guy's good for the long haul. Like, I'm ready to kind of see how this goes. But unfortunately, men, they don't do it that way. It's brutal. Instead, they are solely focused on the question, like, is this woman attractive? Is she hot? Is she cool? Can I have fun with her in the bedroom? That is what he's thinking about from day one. He does not go through that checklist in his head at all until maybe after you've had sex, right? So usually what ends up happening is, by the time a woman has started having sex with a man and they've started building up a connection for her, now he's starting to go, well, is she going to be okay long term? I don't know. And then he starts to think about that. And if it doesn't work out, that's when you end up getting ghosted, or that's when he ends up saying, it didn't work out, right? So that's what you got to remember. Like, it's only fair for him to have a checklist too, right? Like, you have your checklist, you're going through it on day one, and he's got one as well. And he just went through it, a couple weeks later, and there's really nothing wrong with that. So you kind of just have to go into the game realizing that men are a little slower to kind of figure out what they want than women. And so if you kind of remember that, it's a little easier to take it less personal and to not get so emotionally involved at the very beginning. Like, just wait a little bit, see how things go.
Yeah, so that would be a great advice. Just like, don't get involved very quickly, especially these days. Like, give it time and let him get the process too, so he can, what you say, like, they're going in a different process. And I
Yep.
think it's so important to remember we operate different, we are very different. And I
Yes.
think that way your expectations are, in line
Yep.
with what is
Yeah,
happening
exactly.
or something like that. Because other way, it's just so frustrating to try to work in a relationship or to meet somebody when
Yeah.
when we work so differently.
For sure, for sure. And like, I feel like a lot of people's go-to is when things aren't working out, they start blaming themselves. What did I do wrong? What did I text him too much? Did I, what's wrong with me? Am I not good looking enough? And then you
Yeah,
start questioning yourself, and all of that stuff is really negative to your mental health and your self-esteem. And it really is like hurting yourself. But at the end of the day, who's really hurting it? You? Is it them, or is it just you? Right. And that's kind of where self-esteem lives. It lives in your head,
in
right?
here, yeah.
It's all in your head, right? Like and anything that happens in the outside world, shouldn't really be affecting your self-esteem, right? So that is why when you're out there, when you're dating and stuff like that, it is really important to remember to be confident, to have that self-esteem, and just remember that, other people, they're going to have their opinions, just like you have your opinions on them, and then you just move on.
Totally. Yeah. So that would be great. Like just before starting dating or whenever you're in that process, just work in mindset and
Yep.
self-confidence. And
Hmm.
then you'll go in the game with much higher,
Yeah.
like,
Armor.
yeah, totally, with a better situation.
Yeah, I mean, I do think about it that way. Like when I first take a coaching client on, I rarely ask them about what they're looking for in a man. That's
Yeah.
usually not something I ask right away.
Mm-hmm.
I ask more things about, like, well, how does your life look like right now, and what do you feel you need to work on in your life to make it better, and kind of just start picking and prying to see if
Mm-hmm.
there's any weak spots in there, because if there are weak spots inside, it's going to be tough to go out there and play that game, because it's brutal, it's a fierce,
And it goes with
zone.
you. Yeah, it goes with you forever. So if you don't work on
Yeah.
it, it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it's this person or this other person. If you don't work on it before, then all the relationships are gonna be the same.
Yeah. Exactly. And that is a really good point, because I like to tell all of my clients, or on my blog, I mention this a lot, is that if you work on these skills for dating, you will actually be improving your relationship that you end up having in the long term. So it's going to
Mhm.
be a better way to start everything, dating, and then also the relationship or marriage that you're going to get into.
Well, this is so good. I love it.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. So if you want to tell us a little bit, you are offering your 10 days of confidence
Yep.
workbook. What
Yep.
are our audience gonna find there?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a quick little PDF, and it's got a page for every single day for 10 days. And it's just a workbook to actually help you. Like, we've talked a lot today about confidence. We've talked about the theory of it, feel confident, have good
Yeah.
self-esteem.
Mhm.
But it is difficult to do that sometimes. So, rather than talk about the theory, I thought it would be great for our audience today to have actual exercises they
Yeah.
can go through and fill out, and there's a little one for every single day for 10 days. And once you do this challenge, this little workbook, you're going to really get a good look inside yourself and feel a lot more confident for everything, not just dating.
Yeah, that's so good. And then I didn't want to finish before saying, like, you have a book too
Yep.
that
Hmm.
it's called You Don't Need a Man.
Yes,
It's
you
the
don't need a man. Yep.
You Don't Need a Man. How that come up, or
Yep. Yeah. So you can buy that book straight through Amazon and through my website.
nice.
And basically the book it's just talking about what I was saying earlier, in that, modern women, we don't need relationships. We're fine on our own. And I really discovered this once I figured out that just in the 70s, women were not allowed to get a credit card without a man's signature. And I was like, really? The 70s? That's not even that long
It's
ago.
not that long.
Right? And that is mind-blowing to me that you couldn't even have your own credit card if you didn't have your dad or something go and sign it for you.
It's
So
crazy, right?
oh, that is crazy. So yeah, so times have really, really changed. And that's kind of why it's a little weird as a dating coach, me telling women that they don't need a man or they don't need a relationship. But once you go into things with that mindset, you're going to be a lot more confident in all of the dating, because you just know that you're fine without this guy and you can find a better one next time.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking in the beginning. Like, you don't need it, and it's great when you have it, but
Yeah.
it's like an addition to your life. It's not all your life looking for the perfect guy. It has to be, you
Hmm.
have to have your own life, build it, and then you have an additional, like a partner, somebody who team up with you to build life. So I think that's great advice.
Exactly. So yeah, the book kind of takes you from step one all the way to the end. So it does talk about that mindset that we were discussing today. And then it also talks about the details of, how to actually date, even just down to how much you should text somebody. I have actual formulas, when to
Everything.
have sex, when to text, all these things are laid out in the book. So
Well, I
yeah.
bet a lot of people ask about those things because it's true.
Yes.
Like nowadays, you're like, oh, did I text too soon? Like, so like, wait 1 minute. Oh, they just
Yep.
text me. I'm not gonna
Yep.
answer in the moment just in case they
Yeah.
think I'm desperate.
Exactly. Like, do I ask him out on a date? Does he ask me? And it's so funny because I have concrete yes or no answers to all of those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, any of those questions to me is not like, what do I do? What do I do? It's like, I already know the answer right away.
Well,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
we
So,
need to recommend this book to all the audience because I think it's
yeah,
gonna be
for
really
sure.
good, and I'm gonna get it to read it. Even if I'm in a relationship, I think it'll be a great book to read so I can give some
Yeah,
advice to my friends.
for sure. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of great stuff in there.
Totally. Well, Lana, thank you so much for your time and thank you for
No
being
problem.
here sharing with us. We'll
Yeah,
have your website and all your information here too, so
great.
everybody can check your Instagram and the website and your book. Thank you
Great.
so much for everything.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.